Hello, listeners. I am Eric Zavinski,
I'm Todd Crawford.
and we are Too Cool for the Comic Shop. And in a typical Too Cool for the Comic Shop vein, we'll be talking about more movies. There are Star Wars comics. It's close enough. Anyway, this is the third in a trilogy of talking about the Skywalker saga films, episodes 1 through 9. We've already talked about the original trilogy. We've already talked about the prequel trilogy. And now we are moving into the oft talked about sequel trilogy because it's pretty recent. 2015, 2017, and 2019 films. And I'm just going to come out here and say it that I'm a pretty big fan of the Disney era of Star Wars. But Todd, from what I understand it, before preparing for this podcast, you had only seen The Force Awakens. So this is kind of a new territory for you.
Yeah, it is. So what happened was I didn't want to see The Force Awakens because, like, why would I want more Star Wars? Why would I give a fuck what happens to Luke, Han, or Leia after the Return of the Jedi? Like, this story's
Marty
over.
Cooper.
No, I was just happy with what I had. I didn't need more.
Right.
I wanted new ideas. I wanted new series, new stuff. I didn't mind
That's
something in the universe or cartoons, but I didn't really want more movies, especially if Lucas wasn't involved. Not that I thought Lucas was perfect, but it just feel weird to have someone else come in and do it. So I saw Force Awakens just because we were both doing that site, The Odyssey, at the time, and I never got enough clicks, so I thought, well, if I do a review of The Force Awakens, I should at least get a few. So
Did you
I
get some clicks?
Yeah, and it was a way to, like, I could take my brother there to see it, and I went with a girlfriend, so it was just like an excuse to go out for a night, you know? And then I could at least say I gave it a chance.
Fair. Right.
And I saw it, and I guess I just went in to see it, like, not as like this cultural event, but as a blockbuster movie. And it was kind of a thing where, like, well, I'll get into my thoughts on the movie when we talk about the movie. But it as time went on, I wasn't into it. I certainly wasn't a fan at any point. But by the time the second movie in the trilogy came out, I asked myself before going to see it, because I was just like, oh, I'll probably see it, whatever. I thought, what's one character I have any interest in ever seeing again? What's one plot line that I care about introduced in the first movie in this trilogy? What's one thing I actually want to see, and I don't just have this, like, obligation as someone who cares about pop culture to see this movie? And so I just never did.
That's fair enough. I mean, like you said in previous episodes, you were somewhere between a diehard fan and a casual, right? I mean, so aren't really married to Star Wars the way a huge chunk of the population was, apparently, because the sequel trilogy still, destroyed the box office. I mean, I'm pretty sure The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, at the very least, rank among the top 10 grossing movies. So, I mean, that's fair. That's fair enough, especially since movies, varied in marketing and come with a lot of baggage. They do carry original character storylines far further and do so with a lot of other stuff going on as well. But I don't think we can really talk too much more without finally giving opinions on the movies themselves. So let's just dive into the conversation regarding The Force Awakens.
Yeah, so do we just want to... I mean, I don't know what to say about the plot necessarily, because, like, I feel like the people who give a shit
more about your
see it,
original your opinions or your experience when you first saw the movie.
Yeah, so I guess like I said, I went to it as a blockbuster, and when it starts, like, okay, it's a popcorn movie, it's a Hollywood movie, doing the action stuff and the jokes, and I didn't totally mind it for the first third. It's a film I can very clearly break down into 3 acts. And the first one I didn't mind so much. It had that irritating Marvel Joss Whedon dialogue and stuff like that, but I didn't totally mind. Then the second act, once Han shows up, gets a little bit shittier and more nostalgia baity, in my opinion. And then by the third, the point in the movie where I check out of Star Wars completely, and I no longer care about Star Wars, I'm no longer a fan of Star Wars, is when there's the Death Star and they show it, and then they show a much bigger Death Star, the Star Destroyer or whatever, and Han's like, how do we blow it up? And at that moment, it's like, this movie no longer cares about itself. How can I care about this movie? This is shameless. And the rest of the movie,
There's a lot
I
of
just
nostalgia
hated.
baiting. I think the nostalgia baiting in The Force Awakens is probably at its worst compared to the four other Disney films. I think this was their first film that they had without the gate. So when you look at it from a marketing standpoint, they had to, I guess, re-win a fan base that was disenfranchised with the prequels. At least probably what company executives thought. So there's a lot of those moments, right, where Finn picks up the ball that shot at Luke in A New Hope, and just says, "What's this?" or something. I mean, there's lots of those moments in this movie I think are more egregious than stuff in the other Disney era movies. Era movie has like that nostalgia throwback stuff, but I think Force Awakens' biggest sin is that it has it the most out of any of the other films that have come out recently.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the biggest sin for me personally. I think there's a huge plot point that's wasted potential. But it definitely does do that. And to some extent, like, I'm not a Disney business executive, so I don't give a fuck about their marketing plans. Like, I care about the art and entertainment, but, like, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't interest me, but I understand some of that stuff, just from a business standpoint. But I like the lesser moments, some of that stuff doesn't bother me too much. But then it gets to the point where, like, the entire plot is more or less just a New Hope again. And to the point where I think it kind of breaks universe in order to do that and contort the universe in a way that feels, at least to me, I guess just illogical. Like, I hate the First Order. I think it's ridiculous. I don't like that. So the rebellion is still the rebellion, but they control the universe. But then the Empire that's destroyed, that then becomes the First Order, is now bigger than the Empire, essentially, with a bigger Death Star. And I think what they should have done was made it like almost like a terrorism thing, where there's like the First Order is a much smaller unit, and you can get into stuff like that, and they're the underdogs in this one, and maybe they get the upper hand in the second one, and then maybe by the third one you get a Death Star again or something. But I really think that the way the First Order is approached in this film is just absolutely ridiculous, and just, I know it's space fantasy, blah blah, but it's just so uninteresting and repetitious.
I would completely disagree with the same plot remark, because I don't really see a lot of the same plot threads between A New Hope and The Force Awakens. I see a lot of the same window dressings. Something I will say is that the extended
canon. Can you explain the
canon
differences, please?
that
Can you explain the differences between the two, from your perspective?
would say that the characters in A New Hope and The Force Awakens are completely different. Because I guess what was the Finn type character in A New Hope?
Yeah, I could kind of see what you mean there.
I don't think the Poe Dameron character is a Han Solo type at all. People like to say that, oh, Luke is Rey and I guess Leia is Finn, and that Poe is Han. I don't really think those character archetypes line up at all. Rey is completely different than Luke in a lot of ways. She is confident in her abilities in most respects, and while they both have similar outlooks and wanting to escape from their crappy desert planet, which is pretty on the nose, I will say. But again, these movies are made for kids, so expecting art from them is a bit much. But we'll get into that with the second film. Really, the main crux of the plot is two of the original characters, two of the original trilogy characters, wanting to win their son back. And I don't really think that's the context of Vader in A New Hope either.
I see you mean with context, like structurally though, like looking at like on a plot point basis.
But structurally, they're very similar. But I don't think the story content is quite the same at all.
Yeah, I get what you mean. There's a little bit of remixing there with different elements, even from the prequels or the sequel movies.
Right, and I definitely don't think The Force Awakens is the most original film. I mean, of the three sequel trilogy films, it's probably the least original. But at the same time, I kind of respect it for what it does. because it is just a blockbuster movie. And in that sense, it wins a lot of people back who weren't really interested in Star Wars anymore. And I think J.J. Abrams was very interested in telling a complex narrative, and to leave that for the film that came after. At least that's the way I interpret it. And it was really just a roller coaster ride of a movie to try to get people back and interested again. So I don't know. This movie makes me think with Disney executive brain. It truly was a movie that was trying to please everybody, which I think in the business, if you're wanting to make effective art, you probably shouldn't be caring about what other people are thinking. But when you're trying to make a blockbuster, I guess financially, that's what you should be thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you mean for like box office and stuff, but with some of it's like, well, I'm not going to give excuses for going for low-hanging fruit or anything, like, because ultimately it's just not a very good or interesting movie, and that's fine, like, that people watched it and saw it, and it had the Star Wars flavor to some extent, but I mean, how I see it is I don't watch movies thinking, oh, this will make a lot of money.
Right. I mean, I watch movies because they're fun, and to me, this movie is a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, and like, once again, like, looking as a blockbuster, I could maybe see how somebody could feel that way. To me, it's boring because it's just so fucking samey and just not compelling. I think with fun, there has to be an element of surprise, Like, I always use this example for something like Stranger Things, where it's like, when I listen to a pop song, I want a hook. But it kind of feels like a pop song since you get the structure, but you don't get the big chorus necessarily. Nothing pops. And that's probably how I would sum this movie up, where it has the structure and the familiarity, but it doesn't have the identity of a hit to me. It doesn't have any kind of thumbprint or anything.
Right. It plays it, too safe to have that hit.
Yeah. One thing I really want to bring up real quick that I have that's very positive on the movie is the storyboards and stuff like that. Have you ever seen like the art of the Star Wars sequels or the art of Force Awakens or whatever? That stuff's very interesting. The original character stuff, like Rey being Kira, I think was the name. She originally was on a swamp planet. There's a lot of stuff there that was really interesting to me that could have made, at least visually, a better movie, but it just even divorce it from what you would prefer as an audience member or anything. I just think it's very interesting storyboarding and ideas for what could have been.
Right. Some of those storyboards actually ended up getting used in The Rise of Skywalker, which we'll talk about later, obviously. I like to make the joke that Force Awakens essentially has the iconic planet biome from each of the original trilogy movies in one movie, because Tatooine is the New Hope planet, and it's got Jakku, and Hoth is the Empire Strikes Back planet. You have Starkiller Base, which is your other ice planet. Then you have Takodana, which is essentially a forest planet, and that was like Return of the Jedi's Endor. So it's like they're trying to cram not just like ship nostalgia or character nostalgia, but also like biome nostalgia, which I always just thought was really funny, even from the first time that I saw the film.
Yeah, that's true. I did kind of... I didn't totally pick up on that because I used to write the snow planet stuff and all that. But especially the desert stuff, of course, and that's kind of a Star Wars thing, even in, like in the prequels. Which I guess the prequels, it kind of makes sense because it's tying in the story, but there's still a desert planet in Phantom Menace, just like in New Hope.
Right. I mean, I think the sequel trilogy really shows that, you're either a fan of Star Wars or you're not. Because if you're a fan, you're willing to like accept certain things and see where the story progresses. I mean, for instance, if you're a fan, you're going to be digesting the comics and the novels, and there is this whole trilogy of books where the battle for Jakku is the climax, and you get to see that instead of just the setting of where it happens in the movie and where Rey is and where Finn and Poe are in their first scene in the movie. You get to really build up all of these things. You get to build up how Leia was a part of the Senate, and then she got disenfranchised with the Senate in the 30-year gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. And that's why the Resistance is actually a little small group of people, because the government became complacent, and that's what caused this new terrorist organization to rise. And there's a lot of interesting things that incorporated into the expanded media that, for me as a fan, I still get to consume. For more of the highbrow audience like yourself, Todd, you don't get a chance to see those parts of the canon, which is kind of a bummer.
Well, I mean, I think there's two things to that, though. Is that, first of all, like, I don't know, the idea of, like, fans this or fans that, like, I think some fans also are willing to say, like, I like this, I care about this, therefore I expect more from it. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't identify myself one way or another. I don't know. I like the movies.
I agree. That's why I do expect more, and that's why The Last Jedi actually does create an original movie, and that's my second favorite movie in the franchise. But before we move on to that, do you want to give The Force Awakens a rating?
Yeah, I got just a few more quick points before I do, but like with the EU stuff, and that's cool, and that's a part of Star Wars, especially at this point. But shouldn't we want to do that or have an interest too? You know what I mean? Like, it should
millions of people do
to enjoy a blockbuster, and so therefore,
to be fair, millions of people do. The Star Wars novel that just came out, like, was #1 on the New York Times best-selling list. So maybe you're in the minority.
I wouldn't say so. Like, there's millions of people that enjoy it for sure, but there's millions of people that also go just to watch a movie to have fun without doing hours and hours of excuse writing to make.
Do you expect every person who goes to see the movie to want to read books? I think it's asking a bit much.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is. No, I truly do. Like, I know it sounds silly, but, like, this isn't fucking Tarkovsky.
Right. But I think we're conflating two different arguments that, you know, even if it was set up to be more compelling and, the movie's pointing in the direction of reading, I'm not certain that those same people would.
Yeah, I guess here's how I should put it, to put it more accurate or concise for how I feel, is that I enjoy those things and I can look into those things, but I should watch the movie and think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how that happened. Oh, there's a book on it. Sweet, I'll buy it. And, you know, if people do, that's cool. None of those hooks worked for me, but personally, as an audience member, I was not compelled by any of it to look further into it or anything. And I'm sure there is some good content there. You have hundreds or thousands of different artists, many of which are surely talented. You know, you may not like a movie, but you could like a comic. But I don't think you should have to like the movie to like the comic, or vice versa. You know what I mean? I think art should stand on its own.
Absolutely. That's basically how I contextualize the sequel trilogy, is in the vein of a canon that has crap tons of other content. So it kind of makes the movies better in that way. But fully admitting that, you know, I'd be digesting that content regardless, you know, my thoughts on a film anyway, because I'm just kind of that fan that sticks around for all that stuff, because I know the people who make the cartoons are talented, and I know the people who write the books are talented, so I'm, like, there for that stuff anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely get that, and I don't, like, I've never been an EU person, but I think that stuff's cool. I've never had anything, I don't know, personally against it or whatever, but I guess one thing I just wanted to personally bring up was, for this one that's so interesting to me, was that I was always going to see that made from the prequels and Lucas and all that. In watching this film, oddly, there was this absence felt in it. I don't know, like, you enjoyed the film, and I don't know if you felt it or not, but there is a difference. Where even, like, the horrible dialogue in the prequels felt like it was a vision of some sort. Like, there was an identity there of one person. This one has its own, with kind of the Abrams touch, or whatever you want to call it. But even, like, the dialogue and certain stuff, it was just so different. Jarringly so, despite trying much harder than the prequels.
Kind of funny you say that, though, because this movie was written by Lawrence Kasdan, same guy who wrote Empire Strikes Back.
It was, and yet it still feels different.
I mean, it's definitely different, but
Stuff like you got a boyfriend, you
yeah.
got a cute boyfriend who talks.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say stuff like
that.
that is definitely a kind of a Disney Channel vibe, and I definitely thought that when I first watched the film as well. I don't know if there's that many moments that feel that way to me, but there's definitely some of it that just feels kind of like this is the Disney era, kids. Welcome.
Yeah. It's just a thing where you realize, I think, for the first time that Star Wars, as we knew it at least, was kind of inseparable from Lucas in some way. That, you know, like I personally
Right.
am not as interested in, but like it's just different. And that was an interesting
Absolutely.
thing to me that made me reconsider, more so than anything, the prequels. It made me more interested in those where it's like, I don't know, there's just a voice there that's obviously very flawed, but it did make me go back and actually look at the prequels much more favorably, to contextualize my opinions on some of those.
Fair enough. All right, so you hate this movie quite a lot. What's your score?
I gotta go. I thought about it a lot because it's hard for me. We're going letters.
Sure, whatever you want.
All right, yeah, I'll go D minus. Like, obviously, it's not an F. There's parts of cinematography that are good. The special effects are good in many places. I think the acting, for the most part, is horrendous. I think the characters are just unlikable and dull. I think Rey is probably the worst protagonist in a series that I've seen in my lifetime, maybe.
Oh, we're gonna have fun.
Um, I think it's complete and total failure, and it's what convinced me after the prequels and everything else just to never have interest in Star Wars again. I'm open. I mean, you know, if they came out with a movie tomorrow and it looked good, I'd see it, and if I liked it, great. But it didn't work for me at all in any way.
Fair enough. For me, it's a B plus. I think it hits all the right notes for a Star Wars movie. It definitely plays it safe in pretty much every way. That being said, it's just a lot of fun to watch for me. I think the characters are very likable. I think you learn a lot of the right notes about them, especially Finn, very early on. And as far as bringing an old character back from the dead, I think having Han Solo and Chewie get the spotlight in this movie is, for instance, done way better than perhaps Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, for example. I think Han is demonstrating pretty awesome character growth, but also regression in one movie. I like seeing that and kind of have original trilogy character kind of gets a movie for them to have a spotlight. And this is his movie for that. Like the score quite a lot. I think the cinematography is top notch as far as Star Wars is concerned, even if it plays it a little safe. I think that's where J.J. Abrams' identity as a director is probably showing the most, because I don't really think the script or anything shows his identity all that much. But yeah, it was a fun movie. But it's definitely my favorite of the trilogy.
All right, so the next one is I almost said The Force Awakens.
Unless you want to talk
That's
about
so
that one
funny.
again.
Yeah, that's not a joke. That could have been. I could have said that as a joke. Like, it's so forgettable. I forgot some typical joke like that, but I legitimately. I've been doing this thing 8-16 fasting, where you eat 8 hours a day and fast for 16 hours, and so like around like 9 or 10 at night, my brain's just fucking mush.
That's perfect for our recording sessions then that are always at midnight. That helps up the quality quite a bit. But yeah, episode 8, The Last Jedi. Only movie I like more than this in Star Wars is The Empire Strikes Back. So you probably hate this movie a whole lot. So why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, well, here's my perspective, which I think is interesting with this movie, is that, so I like Rian Johnson's movie Brick quite a bit. I remember seeing it as a kid. That was one of the first like hipster movies I saw. Really fun movie. So I was interested to see his take on Star Wars. I think he's a more interesting director than Abrams, and I like some things Abrams done. I liked Super 8 quite a bit. I thought that was a fun movie.
Right.
But like I said, I just had no interest in the property anymore by the time Last Jedi came out, and it was a big controversial thing where people loved it. I knew some people said it was the best Star Wars movie. I knew people who hated it, said it broke the franchise.
Yes.
And then
This is definitely the most divisive point in the Star Wars franchise, probably of all time, probably in pop culture of all time.
Yeah,
Again, the discourse of The Last Jedi is something that I have never seen before and haven't seen since.
Yeah, I would say the only thing I've seen similar was maybe Last of Us 2, which isn't nearly as big,
Absolutely.
but was
In
similar.
fact, I have a video essay coming out on my channel in the next month or so, comparing the fan reactions to both The Last of Us Part 2 and The Last Jedi, because I think they say a lot about us as a species, but I'll save that for my own channel in the future.
So yeah, like I just figured I probably wouldn't like it because I just don't like this series. But then I eventually, I watched it for this, and it was I don't know. It's hard to really watch a movie you've heard about endlessly for how many years has it been since it came out? I think it came out in 2017 or 2016 December, I think.
2017. It's been 3 years.
Oh wow. Yeah, so like, it's a weird thing where you watch a movie and you know every scene before you've actually seen the movie.
And that's a bummer too. So it to you, it's like you're watching a product. You're not even watching a movie. As for me, obviously, I watch Star Wars movies right when they come out, and The Last Jedi is probably my favorite experience I've ever had in a movie theater, to be honest.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I love this movie to death. So before you shit on it, I'm going to talk about it a little bit. In retrospect of the trilogy, The Last Jedi is really what I take away from the sequel trilogy, because unlike The Force Awakens, it was almost given to a director who was like, hey, we will not interfere with your vision at all, Ryan. You just go do whatever, which has positives and negatives when you relate it to the rest of the trilogy. But because of that, we get to see, like you said, or alluded to, a very unique take on Star Wars. And when it's sandwiched in between the two J.J. Abrams films, you could probably agree with this part, that this film feels very, very different.
It does. It's actually shocking in the first scene when it's using these quick cuts and slow motion and stuff like that. It wasn't Star Wars at all in how it was filmed. And I'm not saying good or bad. It was just different once again. Where like I don't think slow motion was ever used in Star Wars that I can recall. At least
not that I can think of. And that's not even something I think about that much. Because it's so radically different in terms of like story and character, but like even the shots, like you said, there's that bombing run, then people are kind of like talking or screaming or in slow motion, and it's like, yeah, that is very different. That's very different for the franchise. So even just that visual identity, they're like, all right, we're divorcing ourselves from the rest of everything right now.
Yeah, and I think at least conceptually, I don't know if it paid off or not. I mean, the movie itself made a ton of money, but then Han Solo, or whatever that was called, Solo, a Star Wars story or something, lost money, and some people say that Last Jedi's reception was a reason. I don't know. But it was divisive, but I do think that establishing a solid identity at this point in the sequel trilogy was a must. You couldn't do a Force Awakens again, even though Force Awakens was commercially and critically successful.
Right. Yeah. So why don't you talk about your reactions to the film now? Because everybody listening already knows I love it. So why don't you go into the nitty gritty?
So I watch it once again with expectations like, it's a crazy divisive movie, and hoping maybe I'll be one of those people that loves it. And then it got to the point with the your mama joke or whatever right at the beginning of the prank call. I was like, I'm probably not gonna love this movie. But I will talk about a few positives, because there's a few things I did like in the movie. Particularly funny enough, from a character that I don't really care for, which is the hacker man guy played by Benicio del Toro. Has a few good contributions to the movie, I thought.
Really? See, that's even for people who like the film, that's a character that most people don't like.
I don't like the character, but there's a few things I thought were genuinely interesting and
okay, like what?
Cool that kind of shocked me. So the first is when they get on the ship or whatever, and they're looking, and the one evil planet is selling weapons to the First Order, but then they're also selling it to the rebels. I thought that was a neat twist. It wasn't a huge moment. It's not like, oh, Luke gets stabbed in the head or something. But that was a neat little twist that just made it a bit more compelling and interesting, I thought.
That's true. I mean, I appreciate his character for like the philosophy of like don't join. His name is literally an in joke amongst the writers, is that DJ stands for don't join, because he's just completely neutral. So that obviously plays into the plot later into the film. Thing I really like about The Last Jedi is that its use of characters far more effective than The Force Awakens. There's a great video essay, and I don't remember who did it on YouTube, that kind of breaks it down. But each of your main leads, Rey, Finn, and Poe, actually has something to do and actually has growth to achieve. And they essentially have their little angel and their little devil on their shoulder. For Rey, that's Luke and Kylo, and the way that they interact is very interesting. And for Finn, it's Rose and DJ. For Finn, a character is encouraging him to be apathetic, and then a character is encouraging him to be empathetic. And every character feels like they have a purpose in this film, to me at least. They don't feel like they're just standing around filling space to fill a little Star Wars character quota.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good way to look at it. It definitely kind of follows that Empire and Attack of the Clones structural trend of each of the protagonists is split up, which I don't think's quite as repetitious or anything. Like, I'm not going to knock that because, in my opinion, like, yes, there's Star Wars tropes, but on the other hand, it's also just kind of trilogy tropes, which Star Wars did help define, but structuralism and, the rule of threes and all that is not George Lucas's invention. It's pretty typical stuff. Not. So, like, yes, this movie has a lot of Empire type stuff in it. I don't recall thinking for the most part ever like, oh, this is just Empire again. Like, it takes a philosophy of Empire, but I think it applies it differently, if that makes sense. I think like the part where they're on the snow planet and they're like, salt is a bit on the nose, but I don't think
the funny part of that moment is the person who looks at the guy who says that, the director of the Rogue One movie they did. Some people were salty about that, so that's actually kind of an in-joke as well.
Wait, so that was the director of Rogue One in the salt scene?
Yeah, not the guy who said salt, but the guy who's right next to him who looks at him and, like, scoffs at him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Can't say that these people who make these movies don't have fun, right?
One thing I
gotta talk about... Part.
Oh, sorry. What?
A super small part, but I figured you'd think that was funny.
Yeah, that is interesting. I didn't know that. I guess I want to talk about two other positives. I like Benicio del Toro. I think it's his last line in the movie where he they say something like what you're doing is wrong or whatever. He's gonna catch up to you, and he just tries like maybe and just walks off camera. I thought that was a cool little scene.
Yeah, I mean they definitely commit to that character quite a bit.
And Luke's beard is a big plus.
Luke's beard is epic. I will say, I think Luke is a better actor in this movie. Mark Hamill's a better actor in this movie than he ever was in any of the original trilogy movies.
That's interesting. I didn't put enough thought into it, really. He's definitely got more experience.
Even Mark Hamill, wasn't feeling every single part of the script, but I think he really hammered it home. I think he's just got a lot more dramatic material to deal with. So I think regardless of, your thoughts of the story, I really think the acting in this movie is pretty incredible, at least from a Star Wars standpoint.
Yeah, no, I definitely think Luke's or Mark Hamill, I should say, is good in the movie. I think his acting's good, and it's. I'm glad you point him out specifically because, I mean, I hate to say it, but he wasn't always like. Let's be real, he's not that great in A New Hope. He's iconic, but like if you're looking at his acting, he's clearly the weakest of the three leads. And I think he did get much better, like immediately. But he is very good in this movie. I think so too, because you see that happen in his career where Mark went to do a lot of voice acting,
after Star Wars, and having to resurface after doing mostly voice acting for a lot of years into as good of a job as he did is pretty incredible. I love it, man. Just good at what he does.
Do you think that Luke being on an island away from everybody is a little bit of an allegory for Mark Hamill's career?
Maybe it is. And then he has to come back. And so him coming back to society is The Last Jedi. Beautiful. So what do you think about the actual story? Because a lot of the meat and potatoes of the story of the entire trilogy is also in this film, because the other ones don't do a very good job of trying to tell a compelling story. So what are your opinions on it? I'm just kind of curious, like Luke succumbing to fear and failing in the way he did.
Yeah, so I do want to say this is is it a 2-hour 45-minute movie, something long like that? It's by far the longest of the trilogy.
It's the longest Star Wars movie,
and it's a lot, and it's a lot of crazy shit. Just wild twists and turns, whether you love it or hate it. Like killing Snopes off and stuff like that. There's a lot going on, but the stuff with Luke being the new Yoda and stuff like that, structurally, it makes sense. I'm fine with all that. I wasn't really into the Luke failing as a leader and succumbing to fear and stuff like that again. And I understand where people say that Luke has always, had a weakness. He's always been emotional and kind of vulnerable in that way. And Darth Vader preys on that, especially in Return of the Jedi. My issue with that is that he's still human, and I get that. But I feel as though that character should have grown beyond some of those things at that point. And for him to succumb yet again kind of cheapens Return of the Jedi and his character growth for me, which I think this entire trilogy cheapens the character's resolution at the end of the original trilogy.
Yeah, I can kind of see that in an effort to make more Star Wars. That being said, I feel like that's kind of a more realistic approach. I mean, do you and I as human beings, are we ever going to fully accomplish our demons and grow as people so that we never make the same mistakes again? And to me, The Last Jedi is actually taking a more realistic approach to character, because I know the fairy tale is that Return of the Jedi, everybody is a perfect character now, and it's a perfect happy ending. And to be honest, I never really liked that. Even as like a teenager, I was like, Return of the Jedi's ending is hokey. Like, it just doesn't, I don't know. The galaxy was at war for so many years. I guess what always felt enticing about a sequel trilogy to me is that there would be consequences and repercussions for how legendary these characters became, and they are still human. So I personally take the other side of that argument, but I do see where you're coming from. You kind of wanted it to be wrapped up.
And I see what you mean as well, where some of the stuff is more a realistic take on it, where, Luke's not going to be the perfect hero all the time. He's still going to have struggles, inner and external. But from a story perspective, I find it unsatisfying. And at the end of the day, I think Star Wars is a celebration of culture and story more than it is a look at humanity. There is that in it, of course.
I would say it's both, and there are certain parts of Star Wars that lean towards one or the other more, and The Last Jedi leans way toward the latter. And that's why I like The Last Jedi. It has actually thematics and things to say. And the whole movie is essentially a diagnosis on failure, accepting it and moving past it, and still trying to the best you can be. Pretty much every main character fails in a major way. And almost every major character has to redeem themselves from their failure by the end of the film. So in that lens, it's a very self-contained film. And I can still like The Last Jedi, even though thinking the rest of the trilogy is sloppily written.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I mean, we'll get into it with the next movie, but so much of the next movie feels like they clearly weren't anticipating the events of Last Jedi to go down. It clearly was not a planned trilogy, which, how many of them really are. But it is funny, some of the stuff they do just to, scramble to come up with a trilogy capper while trying to please everyone. both the people who loved and the people who hated The Last Jedi. It's interesting to me.
That's crazy. I mean, it's an impossible job, but we'll get into that more when we talk about The Rise of Skywalker. But it seems like you're more positive on The Last Jedi than The Force Awakens, which is a nice surprise.
I'm honestly not, in terms of like a movie, if that makes sense. Like I would rather watch The Force Awakens than The Last Jedi. But it does things. It's interesting. I can talk about it. I don't enjoy it at all, but I appreciate that at least it feels like a movie, if that makes sense.
That's fair.
I don't know. I mean, another thing for me too is like I saw The Force Awakens the day it came out. I had an experience with it. I saw The Last Jedi years after it came out, after hearing every point for it or against it, and knowing the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's almost hard to be impassioned, I think, because I was so desensitized to it before I saw it.
I suppose I can kind of understand, but you and I are very different in that regard. Whereas I'm like very passionate about things I've been following. Whereas if something is bad to you, you will drop it, and then it's kind of hard to get re-impassioned about it.
Yeah, I always call it the bullshit detector, and especially with TV shows, it's kind of my version of jumping the shark, where it's like you're invested, but then if something's awry, your bullshit meter goes off, and then you lose investment, which is easier put jumping the shark. But I don't think it's always a moment that's as ridiculous as the word jumping the shark. But so for me, once my bullshit meter's off, it's almost like you feel like you're being played or taken advantage of. You know, like you're talking to someone and then they say something, your bullshit meter goes off, and you're like, I don't know about that guy. I don't know if I want to hang out with him again. It's almost how I feel with certain shows or things.
Yeah. I mean, I think that just goes to show that Star Wars fans, some of them at least, we can put up with a lot of bullshit, apparently, because I know I can.
Yeah.
Not to my credit or your credit, because, you know, I can find things to like, I think, easier than you can. You know, even stuff like throne room fight scene. Just one of the best choreographed fight scenes of all time. And I was just remember being in the theater, being so excited and not knowing what was going to happen if the guys and the bad guys were essentially teaming up. And just kind of that tension and the not knowing what's going to happen in a Star Wars movie. You know, that was new. Star Wars can be very predictable, especially with the movies, the longer they've been out, right? I mean, even the prequel trilogy, you know, for all of their weird eccentricities, could be very predictable. And that's in part because they were prequels. I don't know. That was part of the enthrallment for me and a lot of people with The Last Jedi. A, that it had a vision, and B, that it was just new and exciting, and you didn't know what was going to happen next.
Yeah, and that's something that for me was completely lost. I really can't comment on, because it is that kind of roller coaster thing that I'm not saying it's taken away from me. Like you know, like Force Awakens, I saw spoilers on without looking for them. It was just everywhere. But The Last Jedi, I just didn't really care to avoid them, so I took that away from myself or whatever. But
give you my condolences, because as I stated, this is my second favorite Star Wars movie. It's definitely cracking my top 10 favorite films of all time, so I'm giving it an A+.
I hate doing it, and I hate how, I don't know, there's a certain stigma about the movie discussing it. You know what I mean? It's almost a political thing, if it makes sense with people.
Oh, yeah, and I'm down to get political.
And I don't know, I don't want to be one of those people, and it makes me feel bad being one of those people. It's like one end or the other with The Last Jedi or whatever, but just looking at it as a piece of art, just looking at it as a movie that I watched, I can't give it higher than an F. I don't say that with pleasure. I just did not like this movie.
Damn. We are on opposite ends of the spectrum completely.
We are. I tried, though. I wanted to like it.
I essentially love everything about this film. I think the couple flaws that it has is that some of the humor is off. And it's like, I would say that the humor in the J.J. Abrams films are actually better than the humor in this film, because this film tries to be, darker, obviously, in a lot of ways. And then so when it does have jokes, they kind of come off weirdly.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I didn't think about that watching it, but it almost feels like studio mandate, like, no, we need a laugh here.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like.
Whereas Abrams,
I think Ryan Johnson also has an awkward sense of humor too, so it might just be that. So it's hard to say. True. So I mean, I definitely have things that I can pick and criticize about the film, but on the whole, it makes me feel grand, sweeping emotions like Star Wars is good at doing.
Are you ready to move on to the next one? The Rise of it's Rise of Skywalker, not Rise of the Skywalker, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's always one of those ones for me, like the Titanic or something.
Yeah.
Or Sopranos versus the Sopranos and all that shit.
I swear to God, if you like the Rise of Skywalker more than the Last Jedi, I'm gonna kill you, Todd.
Do you want the spoiler alert? It's really funny. I think I'm the only person on Earth that probably likes this movie best of the trilogy.
Yeah, I think you are, Todd. That's very concerning, and I'm very worried about you.
I joked about it before watching. I was like, watch, I'll be the one person that I don't know, dislikes this one the least or whatever. But,
just tell me why.
You know, it was the least painful.
Ow! Are you kidding me? This destroys like everything that the trilogy was building up. How can you say that?
I wonder if maybe I was just broken by the time I saw it.
I think that's the problem.
It here. Really could be.
Your expectations were already so low that you just kind of didn't care in a different way now. You're killing me, man.
I wonder. I can't explain it. I'm not saying I love the movie or anything, but I didn't particularly mind it as much as the others, and a lot of that was just a complete disconnect from it. I think I was at that stage of cancer that like I was just on life support, just like getting through it until the final breath, but I couldn't feel pain anymore.
Okay, so this was like had your morphine now, I guess. I don't know.
Something like that.
You were experiencing things that would cause pain, but you were immune to pain at this point.
I think that's what it was. And once again, I knew about shit in this movie, so like I know that Palpatine comes back and stuff like that. So like, and it was lame, but at least watching, I was like, oh, I like the makeup job they did on him. That's kind of neat, I guess. And
right. No, I mean, again, I love The Force Awakens and I love The Last Jedi. So from my perspective, you know, watching this for the first time, I was all aboard the hype train, and you know, things that, you know, bother me now, I didn't really let them bother me on a first viewing. But every time I watch this movie, it bothers me more and more. And by the way, you know, you've seen these last two movies in the trilogy only once. You know, I've seen them all at least a few times. You know, every time I watch The Last Jedi, I like it more. Every time I like The Rise of Skywalker, I like it less. So that's where I'm at. I don't hate this movie. I still think it's better than Attack of the Clones. I think Attack of the Clones is the worst of the saga because of like pure technical reasons. You know, I still think the actors are better in this trilogy, just on the whole, which obviously you seem to disagree with. With the material they're given, I think they're pretty good actors. Does the writing consistent? Not necessarily, but there's still some things that I find memorable about the film. There's some moments that stick way better than others. But yeah, no, you might be the only person who likes this one the most. The trilogy.
I think Oscar Isaac has my favorite line delivery in the entire trilogy in this one.
Oh, what line? Please tell me.
Somehow Palpatine is returned. It seems as though like he's like reading the scripts. Oh god damn it! Like,
yeah, no.
I've seen it 1,000 times, and I die every fucking time. I love it so much. It is so funny to me.
What?
It's even just somehow
maybe
don't even explain it. It's just fuck it. It's Palpatine's back, and it's so brilliantly lazy. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, so you kind of respect how ballsy this movie is with how lazy it is.
in that
Is
one
that what it is?
specific scene. That one specific scene to me is almost like how I love the opening of The Dark Knight Rises. It reaches that level camp for me at a point or two in the movie. Yes.
Okay. I mean, this of the three movies, I think this one has the most camp. It has the most Flash Gordon DNA. So I can kind of, I guess I can see that.
I think that is a part of it too. For me, it made it a little better. Was it just has kind of an adventure feel to it a little bit more. I don't know.
It does. I mean, it is the only movie where like the main cast is together, a swashbuckling journey, which is pretty fun. It's fun. It's definitely different. It doesn't feel like The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. It's still a crazy hot mess, but it definitely feels different.
Yeah.
What do you think about dagger being used as a projector / compass to find a speck on the Death Star wreckage, to find a secret triangle that gets smashed to pieces anyway?
You know, I feel stupid because it just doesn't really make sense. I mean, I'm going to say this much now. I fucking loathe J.J. Abrams' mystery box bullshit. I hate it. I've always hated it.
Thing we can agree on in this episode.
And I think in The Force Awakens, it worked much better than in this, because even though I thought it was stupid, then like Luke Skywalker's missing, we got to find a map to him. It's like, okay, I'll go find Luke Skywalker.
At least the first movie in a trilogy. Like I can put up with bullshit then, but you can't fucking do that movie. Now at the end.
And even like the physics of it or whatever. So like the Death Star, like I know that it's a nitpick, but like I saw the Death Star blow up and it was pretty fucking decimated. But now they're just big chunks of it. And
absolutely.
And whatever. That's nerd shit, you know. I'm not gonna drop on that raid. But it's fun.
That's fun stuff to make fun of. And I will say that I think this movie is the most fun to make fun of. Maybe that's its saving grace. Like it's hard to describe because like maybe you disliked the other two movies more because they were trying so hard. And I think this movie just says fuck it more than the other two movies did in a weird way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think what's fascinating is just the desperation where like the people that love The Last Jedi really love it and the people that hate it really hate it. And it's clear they didn't have a plan for a third movie. At least I think they had certain plot points they knew they wanted, but there was no like script that was in concrete or anything. So I think with the reception of Last Jedi, I think with just what happened in it in general, the plot, I don't think was totally expected. So like, I really think so much this movie is like, what the fuck do we do? How do we end this story? And it's so interesting to me. But going back to the Wayfinder, I don't get it. So she...
Oh, no, you're not supposed to get it. I brought it up because it's like the funniest shit in the movie to me.
Okay, good. Because like they did an Aquaman, and I thought they did it much better in that movie. It's goofy in that one, but it's kind of a silly Indiana Jones superhero thing in that one. In this one, it's just like weird. To me, it almost felt like in a PlayStation game where you're supposed to find something, so you just aim the camera around and then it vibrates when you're on the object you need to inspect. I was like, oh, well, maybe Ray, the Wayfinder's vibrating, so Ray knew.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just brought it up because that's one of my favorite lapses of logic in the film, so I just wanted to trigger you, essentially.
They even have a fight in the throne room, her and Kylo Ren. And it's so goofy.
They do. They incorporated Leia pretty well for her being gone from this world, I would say. I don't envy that editing job.
Yeah, and
I think that chunk of the movie is the most poignant for me. Kylo Ren's one of my favorite Star Wars characters. You know, his arc is pretty much maintained, even though the writing of the overall story is not planned and it's wavering. So basically, you know, the stuff with him towards the middle of the film I like a lot. But then it falls into the campiness of the whole final battle stuff, and it's just, I don't know. The Rise of Skywalker is basically one of those movies where it's like, remind yourself that it's for kids. Remind yourself that it's for
Oh
kids.
yeah. It gets into
Because
like
at the end of the day, these movies excited a lot of children and gave a lot of joy. I mean, you have to be a pretty cynical guy to be like, well, I wish they didn't exist at all. Because then you're basically just denying a bunch of kids their fun, right? So it's kind of the way I view the Rise of Skywalker in a way.
I get that. It's a tough thing for me because like I love Jar Jar. So like
I mean, so
you know what I mean? So it's like these movies, even though I don't like them as a 27-year-old man, there were 27-year-old men that thought the Phantom Menace was the worst thing on earth. You know what I mean? So it's like I totally get it, and I get that my perspective's irrelevant to anyone but me, and that's cool. That's actually kind of a great thing about movies, I think, and blockbusters that I love. But I do wish that kids got better movies. I do want kids' entertainment to be good because I care, and I want kids to have good movies that are enjoyable. And I'm not saying like, these ones are bad, don't show them to your kids. But I still want to enjoy kids' movies just as a fan of movies and just because I care about kids' culture.
Right. All right. Well, I don't think we need to talk about it much more. I don't have a whole lot to say. So what would you rate this movie?
It's a really hard and weird movie to rate.
It is. I mean,
really
you're going to give it a
tough.
better grade than The Last Jedi for some reason, which I still don't understand. But
yeah, I guess I'm going to give it like a D. And like, it's not, I don't think it's a good movie. And like the climax is just so cartoony and silly. It's like Palpatine just shooting his load. There's like infinite spaceships and infinite lightning. It's weird, and it's like an old Linkin Park video or something. And it's so like over the top.
You have to say that. Oh, why'd you make it worse?
I couldn't leave it alone. But I don't know, like,
God, I hate you so much. Oh,
I was talking about Oh Brother, Where Art Thou today, and I mentioned that I did not like that movie when I saw it in high school, and I said I don't think it's a bad movie. I watched it in high school, and I was having a bad night, and I didn't enjoy the movie when I watched it. I'm not criticizing it. I just had a negative experience while watching it. If I watch it today, I could love it. I've had that before with movies. I didn't like Princess Mononoke when I first saw it because I was too tired. And then I watched it when I was awake, and I liked it because I was in the mood to watch a movie. I didn't think the movie sucked. I just had a bad viewing experience. And similarly with this movie, I just had not a great movie experience, but a relatively painless movie viewing experience.
maybe it's because you knew you were at the end. You made it through the Star Wars marathon that you put yourself on.
It could be, and this was like, I watched them pretty much back to back, like one a day.
Oh, so this was the 9th movie for you.
It was the end of the marathon.
Oof. I mean, I do Star Wars marathons because I love Star Wars, but, especially since 2 of those movies were new to you, that's a lot to take in, dude. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I needed years between the releases, but I wouldn't explode, so...
Yeah, I wish they released them in some way that people could have done that instead of just dropping them all on Disney Plus at the same time.
Yeah, I know. Wouldn't that be something?
I don't know why they did that, but...
why would they do that? I mean, so what would I rate this movie? Because, hard for me to divorce Star Wars brain from film critic brain sometimes. See, that's the thing. It's I think this movie is still very entertaining, and a lot of ways, that's what this movie is trying to be. So I'm trying to think maybe I'll give it a C plus. I'll still have my least favorite be a higher rating than any of the ratings you gave, just to keep up my Star Wars shill perspective here. That's still not great, but I don't even remember what I gave Attack of the Clones. Might have been using number scores back then. I don't know anymore.
Yeah, it probably changed by the movie. Phantom Menace was an 8. Attack of the Clones was like a C.
Yeah, I feel like it may have. I don't know anymore.
Revenge of the Sith was like a triangle.
Yeah, it was a good triangle.
Yeah,
favorite shape.
Triangle.
Okay, so let's try to rank the movies really quick because I think I know what your ranking is. What is it from best to worst for you?
It's really tough because like I feel like there's two separate rankings, to be honest. There's like viewing, and then there would be, I don't know, I don't want to say maybe not what I think is the best movie necessarily, maybe it's respectable, or you know what I mean, whatever you want to categorize them. So for viewing, I'd say Rise of the Skywalkers, The Force Awakens, Last Jedi. But then in terms of like respectability or whatever, I'd probably put it maybe in like the reverse order actually.
Okay. See, I was talking about the whole saga too, but you're just doing the trilogy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But no, you're fine. No, but you know, the trilogy's at the bottom for you. So like, is Empire at the top for you? Or is there New Hope at the top for you?
So for me personally, I gotta go Empire at the top, and they're neck and neck. Like I really don't think that one's better than the other. I just think they're two different beasts. But I think Empire's a well-oiled machine. I think it's a smoother movie. I think it's a better made movie, better acted movie, better written movie. But I think A New Hope's that little movie that established all of it, which makes it in many ways more impressive to me. But I do go Empire.
Oh, so your order, if I remember from our podcast correctly, would be 5, 4, 3, 6, 1, 2,
yep.
9, 7, 8.
Yes. I had to
Gotcha.
think about it for a second.
Right. I'm surprised I remembered it that well. Got it. Yeah, so I think my order is 5, 8, 3, 4, 6, 7, 1, 9, 2. That's my order.
It's kind of crazy that there's so fucking many of these movies at this point. Like, there's still how many feature-length films
of rankings that you can do?
Because like that's leaving out the whatever you want to call them, Star Wars stories or just non-numbered ones too.
Yes, which there are 2 of, Rogue One and Solo, and maybe after we take a big Star Wars break, we could talk about those in the future, but we got to take a big break first, I think.
Yeah, I think it almost feels to me like you just went like 9 rounds in the ring with a professional boxer.
Yeah,
Not
like
that
your
I didn't
brain
have fun.
is not on the wavelength of the Force, young Padawan.
Yeah, it was fun in different ways watching each of the trilogies, and they were each unique viewing experiences, especially when compared and contrasted with each other. But I've definitely enjoyed life a little more now that it's over, in the sense that it began to feel like homework for sure by like movie 4, let alone movie 9.
Yeah. Especially since you I mean, of course, you know, in proper viewing order, the trilogy that you would despise is the last 3. So it probably didn't help your opinions of those ones much either.
No, probably not. To be fair, I didn't rewatch. Actually, I guess this is a pretty big disclosure. I did not rewatch The Force Awakens. I watched all these movies with my roommate.
You only watched each of those films once then.
Yeah. I saw like maybe like 20 minutes of The Force Awakens because my roommate watched. I watched all of them with him, and he said he was going to do The Force Awakens, but I was going to skip because I'd already seen it, and I just said, I can't rewatch this movie. I'm sorry. I don't have it in me. I can't do it.
Fair enough. Well, I really do enjoy the sequel trilogy despite its blemishes. So if you're listening and you like those movies, you're not stupid, because I consider myself pretty smart. There are things I like about them, but at the same time, I'm a huge Star Wars shill. So take for that what you will.
Well, I think a big thing with these movies and the discussion that's unfortunate is that, like, you know, who cares if you like or don't like the newest Star Wars movie? You know what I mean? Like, I think you can have dynamic or interesting discussions.
Like the new Star Wars movie, didn't you hear?
What?
People will kill you. Like, they'll actually kill you if you like Star Wars movies.
Yeah, and that's what's
It's
sad to me
awesome
is
to be a
that
Star Wars fan anymore, dude.
it's just sad because, like I said, it's become political in the sense that it's like that level of hatred for the other party, and you have to be loyal,
Yes.
and it's just, I don't know. To me, that's not what being a film fan's about. I think it's fun. I get excited when someone disagrees with me in the sense is like, oh, you love this character, I think they're awful. What attracts you to them, or why do you like this movie more than that one? I think that's interesting. That's fun. That's what makes communication exciting. That's what used to make the internet exciting. And now,
Honestly, we don't disagree very often, so for this podcast, it provided some good variety.
yeah, and that's cool. Like, I don't think you're a fucking idiot or something because you like this movie. You know, I like worse movies than The Last Jedi. I love worse movies than The Last Jedi, from objective standpoints. And you know, that's what makes entertainment great. That's what makes it fun being a fan to me.
Exactly. See, this is a very highbrow, too cool for the comic shop discussion that we're having right now. So the people in the comic shop, they're not agreeing with us right now.
No, because they're not cool enough.
No, because they're lame. They're reading comic books. Ugh.
They may be lame, but I'm Todd Crawford.
And I'm Eric Zavinski.
We are too cool for the comic shop.